Welcome back to the Think Freight podcast, and thanks for joining us today. If you're watching, things are a little bit differently. I am not sitting with a guest yet. Jesse Taylor from Parade will be joining me in this episode, but I just wanted to give a quick intro because we did record this a little bit differently. The conversation is going to be slightly different than the normal Think Freight flow and conversation style. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know what you guys think. But this episode is brought to you by Talento. Talento is more than just nearshoring. Talento is a partner that helps logistics businesses scale smarter and more efficiently. Focused 100% on freight, supply chain, and logistics, they connect you with professionals who are ready to contribute. But that's just the beginning. Talento helps diagnose your company's challenges, optimize your processes, and implement technology solutions, whether through talent or through strategic partnerships. No more searching far and wide for talent or tools. Talento offers a comprehensive approach to improving operations and growing your team. Visit talento-io.com to learn how they're helping businesses transform and scale. Looking for a freight-specific CRM? Sales-CRM is built exclusively for freight brokers and freight agents. Manage shipper sales prospecting, track your carriers, and monitor the lanes they run, all in one powerful platform, and all for one extremely affordable price. Try Sales Dash free for 14 days with no credit card required. Visit sales-crm.com today. Operations teams, streamline your driver communications with vendor flow. Their platform organizes all of your driver communications in one place, boosting satisfaction with faster response times. And no more juggling between multiple apps. Get a free consultation today to see if vendor flow is right for you. Freight World, meet Purple Squirrel, the connector that links you with the top talent and winning opportunities. From inland transport to maritime freight forwarding, they deliver competitive commission splits and genuine support because they give a shit. Ready to earn more? Explore your options with Purple Squirrel. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
It seems like every week there's a new AI offering out there, and that's fantastic. And the fact that these companies are finding customers and finding all these unique use cases, there's really just kind of like an arms race. It's kind of like a marketing race, and that is great because that's market validation. I love competition because it just means we're on to something, but we've been on to something. And so there's a lot of architecture and other things behind like what happens after you automate that phone call. And that's where a lot of the power is in what we're doing. And so that's what's really exciting right now. But man, it's like technology has been evolving really quickly over the last several years, but it just seems to go quicker and quicker, and everybody's just trying to make heads and tails of it.
Yeah, when I was at Manifest, there was so many different AI tools, AI bots, different like AI platforms that I honestly had never heard of. Like, I mean, there was the ones I had heard of that were, obviously there, but like there were so many new ones, companies that are rebranded to, become AI companies. It was pretty shocking to see like that many. Like it was, I mean, I wasn't shocked, but also I was shocked. Like, yeah, AI was such a big buzzword, but I wasn't expecting to see 6 or 7 or 10 different AI agent companies or companies coming out with, brand new AI tools in their platform. So it was like kind of like a reset, like a tech reset for me. I was like, wow, this is really like AI is not just such a buzzword anymore. Last year it felt like more of just a buzzword, and this year it's more of been very well implemented to a lot of tech and a lot of tools that we're seeing every day. So I think that's been really kind of an interesting point to start 2025.
Yeah, and it's like we've got, I agree with you, a year and a half ago, actually, basically at the end of 2022 onward, when ChatGPT came out, everybody's saying like AI is the future. We're working on something really cool, and that's important to get that message out that you're working on it. Okay. But then now it's starting to go live. Now people's products are ready or mostly ready or minimum viable product at the very least to get out there and start winning some customers, start transforming some customers' businesses. And so, yeah, it's time of rapid change, and maybe we're coming out of, hey, we're working on something cool, to now we've got a product, to maybe in the next year or two the real winners will start to emerge. um who knows? I don't know anything about the timeline there, but it seems like that might be the potential next phase of, like, okay, there are going to be some that really rise above the fold and some that don't so much, because I think that an AI agent is something that is, I don't want to say easy to build because I could never build it,
Yeah.
but it's something that if you can build a product that does something so cool in less than a year, it's got to be, you know, quicker, especially because you can use AI tools to write your code, and just the velocity of producing products is increasing as well. But
No,
then, it's
you're spot on
commoditizing.
though.
Yeah.
You're spot on though, because the thing is it is so rapidly evolving, and AI I think is becoming a little bit easier to work with in every sense. Like, if I don't know how to use AI, I mean, I could very easily teach myself in a weekend. Will I learn how to, build an AI chatbot in a weekend? Maybe not, depending on your level of, technical skills and things like that. You and I might be able to, figure it out in a weekend if we really did, dug into it. Some other people maybe a little bit longer, and some people may have it done in 25 minutes. But it, it's evolving so quick and so, at such a rapid pace that, like you said, it's people are being able to use AI to build their AI tools, to be able to build their tech tools, to be able to kind of get better and faster proof of concepts, to be able to get things to market, or at least even to their potential customers, to be able to kind of see how these tools might be utilized. With that being said, I want to ask Jesse. So what problem is your AI solving, and why is now the right time to really launch it? Because, like we said, so many have launched, so many have been evolving in the space for the last 6 months or a year. So why is now the right time?
Yeah, so we launched CoDriver, which is the email AI agent for automating those carrier inquiries. So brokers spend all day just their email inboxes piling up with carriers saying, "Can I get the load details? What's your rate on this? Is this still available?" And every single one of those, the broker has to go into their TMS, go into whatever their carrier vetting platform is, look at the rate, get back to that carrier, copy, paste, copy, paste. For every single one of those, and every single email, just start over. And a huge percentage you can't even work with. We found that about 70% of those inbounds were for carriers that you just straight up couldn't work with, or it just didn't end up, working out. So there is a ton of time being spent on that. And with the email agent that gets back to that carrier before they even leave their inbox, we've been doing that. And so the big launch now that we're extremely excited about is the phone version.
Mm.
And the reason why we started with the email rather than starting with phone is because we found that there was a lot more email activity to be automated. So there are clearly a lot of phone calls, but we actually have found that there are way more quotes coming in over email than there are over the phone. So having that baseline of email automation built, and now we've collected over 2 million quotes from carriers across our customers, so that those were email conversations that were faster for the carrier. The carrier got their information quickly. They delivered a quote. And this is really important. Every single quote was remembered, even if you don't use that. So that's where the deeper understanding of the data that I'll definitely circle back on. So the phone launch is an addition to that, to say, yeah, well, your carriers are spending 7 to 10 minutes on hold with you, and then you are still, I mean, if you've ever sat on a freight brokerage floor, right, it's a lot of, hey, okay, yeah, that load's still available, let me check on that, what's your MC number? Hey man, I'm sorry, we can't work with you, we need a authority that's 2 years old, or whatever it is. So that's so much time being spent. And that's a huge problem, because that's not very valuable work. It's important work, it does need to get done, but it's the low value work, and it is also pretty straightforward to automate at least that initial part of the conversation of just like, what's your MC number? What's your rate? Yeah, that load's still available. Then we hand that off to an actual rep to go and either book the load, negotiate whatever it is that they do. That's up to the broker. So that the time is really right to say we're going to do email and we're also going to do phone. And that's just for those initial type conversations, that top of the carrier sales funnel, the initial, you know, interaction that you have with a carrier. There's much more later in the relationship, but now it's literally everything can be thrown in there and done with Co-Driver.
No, that's awesome. So yeah, it sounds like co-drivers really evolved a lot since the last time I had you on the podcast. Because I
Definitely.
think last time it was just the phone version. You guys were doing a lot of cool stuff with that, but just the email version, we're doing a lot of cool things with that. But yeah, I think that being able to take that data, and that conversational data about what brokers and carriers and what that relationship and what that conversation looks like, and being able to use some of that data in that phone, in the new phone segment, is definitely gonna elevate kind of, I think, the tool in general, because like you said, it has a lot of that data to feed off of, and it's kind of that proprietary data. It's not just kind of random data that's out there from brokers and carriers. It's just it's real transactional data that you guys are going through with your platform. So I think that's really a valuable way to go about it. Now I want to ask, because something we hear about a lot, especially in the freight industry, is relationships. How does this AI, maybe help improve some of those longer term carrier relationships? Because if I'm not answering the phone and able to say, "Hey Jesse, how's your day? How's the kids? How are those things?" and maybe it's just kind of getting swept up into in AI. How can we maybe kind of work on those relationships with AI as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I have several key thoughts on this. The first is that asking a carrier what's their MC number, sorry, we can't work with you. Okay, bye. I
Yeah,
don't think that that's where the relationship
for sure.
happens. Now, when you are talking to a carrier on the phone, you need to do that carrier discovery. You need to ask them those things, but you can only get to that point with a carrier when your loads are mostly off the board and when you actually have a second to actually dive into that conversation with them.
That's fair.
Um, and this is using the quote data to, because if you ask a carrier, there are kind of two main areas for carrier relationship building. There's the personal relationship. How are the kids? How's your football team? Whatever that might be. How's your bracket doing? Mine's doing awfully. I did it based on which mascot could win in a fight, so it's not going well. Montana Grizzlies, I should never have picked them. Anyway, so the
That's
next,
hilarious.
yeah, it was a long shot. I do have Duke at number one because I'm imagining it as being the actual devil. So like not that many
Fair.
would win in a fight. Anyway, I digress. So basically, I think though that you can think of this as lots of AI can make your brokerage faster. Not a lot of AI can actually make you smarter.
Yeah.
And when you see that second type of carrier relationship angle, which is not just the personal relationship, which is obviously very important, but the second being, where's the business relationship? Where's this carrier's capacity that is untapped, and how do I leverage that for my capacity needs? And that's where the mutual beneficial relationship happens. And you need to understand where that carrier's capacity is at all times. And part of that is seeing the trends in the data. Because I talked to a broker, or a former broker, sorry, who recently joined our team and is now in our sales team. And she said that she knew lots of people at her former brokerage who wouldn't write down quotes from a carrier because it's like, well, that guy's not going to cover the load anyway. I know he's not going to cover it. But what happens in 3 weeks from now when your guy that regularly runs that can't? And it's like, oh, there was that guy that quoted me a couple times on the lane. Who was he? Well, this remembers every single quote that you ever had. And so when you go and talk to that carrier, you can say, well, I saw that you quoted 3 different times in the past month on this lane. You also posted 5 trucks on this lane. I know that you also dropped a couple of loads in the origin of this lane. So, what's your capacity looking like there? To build that intelligence about where your capacity is and where you might need to develop more capacity, you just can't do that stuff when you're saying, hey, no, sorry, I can't work with you. Okay, bye. Over and over and over again. It really unlocks
Yeah.
time back in your day to have those conversations with carriers, but it also provides a system of intelligence to show you which carriers you should be going and calling and talking to about those deeper strategic relationships.
Well, yeah, and it makes it a lot easier too, right? Because if I was one of those people that if I had a load or a lane, or even if it was something that was relatively covered, or I knew, hey, guys dispatched, even if you felt a little shaky, hey, sorry, this is covered, but we do run this 3 times a week. So like, what is your capabilities like, blah blah blah, because you never know who's on the other side. Yeah, maybe a spot carrier that's never going to want to run this lane again, and they're just trying to get home one time, and they're in the area. Cool, we can work with that data. But like you said, there's other carriers, there's other people out there who you may miss if you book that one carrier first call, and who may have been a better fit long term for that load or for that carrier relationship. So yeah, and being able to log all of that data. I mean, I used to have a notebook, like a physical notebook, where I would keep all that. And as soon as that notebook was filled, I mean, I kept it on my desk because it had a lot of data in it. But it was like, if I had a carrier from the beginning of the year or from middle of last year that I'm trying to find, and I didn't write it down in a smart place in my actual computer, in my notes, in a carrier note or something like that, I'm not going to find that note in my 15 notebooks I've gone through since then. So being able to find that that data, that hey, where are these carriers, where are they, who called on this, and there's times when like right now, the market may not be as tight, but there's a time when the market's going to get a lot tighter, and you need to be able to know every carrier that's called in on that McAllen to Chicago lane, because there's times when that McAllen lane, there's no trucks available posted on the lane, and you're going to have to just start calling every carrier in McAllen, every carrier that's moved a load from McAllen, and just try to be able to find those. So having that all in one place, I think, is kind of invaluable.
Yeah, 100%. And it's putting a lot less work on the actual carrier rep to go and
Yeah.
write down every single quote. And if they get one over the phone, like they're just talking to a carrier, and the carrier quotes another load, definitely I would say it's a great idea to record that in Parade, right? Because
Yeah.
that quote is going to be useful later. But imagine how many phone calls don't even get picked up. And
Oh, yeah.
imagine how many emails don't even get answered. And so it's like, even if you didn't even interact with that carrier, that's capacity data. That's your proprietary capacity data. Because if you think about even if you're talking about public load boards, if you're putting your load out there, that is like a carrier marketing motion. And those are, I just think about this in terms of carrier sales as being sales. And that is a carrier marketing motion. And you can go and capture leads. It's not just capturing trucks, it's capturing leads that could potentially move down that carrier sales funnel from that very top of the funnel, the first interaction you have with the carrier, the first time that they run a load with you. But how do we get then more of those carriers in there? And then also, how do we figure out which ones we want to move down the funnel, which ones we think are going to be a good fit for the business based on their capacity, their specialization, how good of service they run, all the way till the bottom of the funnel, where we have waterfall tendering out to carriers, where if you have rates on file with a carrier, they can automatically be sent out a tiered waterfall tender with just, hey, click book now, to the very bottom where it's owned capacity. You don't even have a book now option. You just automatically with Parade send that rate con out to the carrier, because it's the same guy that runs it every single day. Why would I spend a second booking that individual load when I can just call him once a week, see how he's doing, see how the account's doing, do that relationship business without, fumbling around with loads and just doing paperwork, pushing paper around. It's really something for every kind of step in that journey for the carrier.
So it really sounds like Parade's, new tool, their new AI tools. It's not to take away from the carrier sales rep, or to take away from the relationship aspect of it. It's really an enhancement tool, really, to especially, I think, for smaller brokerages, or even mid-size, whatever size you are. It's a great tool. But I see it, especially coming from the smaller brokerage world, where you may have two, three, five, seven people, and if you get blown up on a lane, you're losing, like you said, proprietary data to your lanes, that you're no longer able to just kind of understand and leverage. So I see this being such a great add-on for brokers of smaller size, but also any size brokers, mid-size and above. that, really has a need to elevate what they're doing. Um, and especially going into kind of these uncertain logistics times, we've seen a lot of trends kind of all over the place in terms of data. So it really needs to be worrying about, or you really need to be worrying about kind of optimizing like your carrier capacity and your management right now, as opposed to worrying about it in a year or in 6 months, a year when capacity tightens back up.
No doubt. And we specifically target that mid market, the very, very small, just getting going brokerages.
Yeah,
Sometimes the freight can be a little bit inconsistent and they might not
for
have
sure.
quite the carriers in their network where it can be a slower start to get them tons of value, especially on the carrier reuse piece. But really in that mid market where they've got all of the
Yep.
energy, they've got the carrier network, they've got the consistent freight. That's where, but they don't have CH Robinson money to go and build their thing. And speaking of them, we recently onboarded a customer that said, "All right, Parade, like if we're not at 50% digital freight in the first 6 months, we have a serious problem." And that's because and now they're at 62%, by the way. So it's like
Wow.
pretty freaking crazy. But a lot of former CH Robinson and all the other large brokers that have a lot of in-house technology, they leave there, they go to be leaders at smaller to mid-market brokerages, and they're like, wait, I'm used to being at this big brokerage that had so much data and automation. I knew where every truck in America was at any given time, and I could call them and tell them who I was, and it was not even a problem. To I have no idea, and I have to just post this load and hope something nice happens. It's like, how do I make that jump back to that, to better understanding where all of my untapped capacity is, go win more freight based on that untapped capacity? So there's so much enablement for the brokerage that wants to grow, doesn't want to just rely on adding headcount to do that, but doesn't want to sacrifice the relationships either. So it's really that sweet spot of like, yes, we want to automate those lower value, we'll call them top of the funnel type conversations, and get people really into a mindset of curating a network. I think that what a great brokerage does is curates a network of carriers that really they uniquely can buy capacity from at great rates, give great service. And that's how brokerages are going to differentiate themselves. Because if you're just taking that load, that might be a contract load, putting it out on public load boards, taking it with the first carrier that calls in on that thing with a somewhat halfway decent rate over and over again, I see that as a missed opportunity to create real value and build your network and set yourself apart as a brokerage.
With that being said, what kind of other data are you guys maybe looking at or leveraging with your AI to kind of help make maybe those better carrier recommendations to avoid those one and done, spot transactions? Because I know there was times where there are those lanes where they do tighten up pretty quickly. So how do you guys kind of go about kind of helping in those situations and making those recommendations?
Yeah, totally. Two examples come to mind. The first would be, I touched on this a little bit before, but seeing where your consistent quoting is. So if you see, if you're trying to cover a load, we'll provide matches to say, well, here's all of your live quotes right now. Here's all the posted trucks. Here's all your reload opportunities. If a carrier emails you, many carriers do this. They send out an email to say, here's all my trucks available this week. That email just goes right directly in the garbage most of the time, unfortunately. I'm actually kind of surprised that carriers still send them out,
Yeah, it
but
does.
they do. But that's really good capacity data. There's 21 other different signals that we're using to figure that stuff out. Where's your live capacity? But there's also what we would call a suggested match, which is, here are carriers that have run this lane before, but we don't know if they have a truck right now. They've been quoting this lane pretty frequently, but they never quite won the business, whatever that may be. Where they have a consistent pattern. That's where we start to get into patterns. So that's on the individual load coverage side of like, if I'm working a load, I need to find a carrier. We're going to find that live capacity first, and then their suggested matches based on past patterns of carrier behavior, with a heavy preference to in-network carriers that like, and trust. The second one would be this idea of waterfall tendering. So where every every shipper of size has a waterfall and they've got a routing guide. And many brokers, especially the not giant ones, don't quite have that. So this is an opportunity to, if you have carriers that regularly run lanes, set them up on automation and even do auto assign where the carrier, you've obviously had that conversation with the carrier about a rate on file, and you just start sending those carriers freight. The really cool thing about that, though, is not even just the function of the waterfall tendering. I think that, man, I'm not a software engineer, so I don't know what it's like to build any of this, but that to me seems fairly basic in terms of like the actual mechanics of it. But what I think is really cool is the suggested lanes. So you can actually go in there and see where your lanes that you are running consistently, that you have carriers taking it somewhat often. And it'll actually suggest to you, here are the carriers that are your top carriers for this lane. Here's the rates that they run it at. We'll actually suggest waterfall tenders. So you don't have to go in, download your data in Excel spreadsheets and figure out like, which are the carriers that I should run on this lane. It's like, we already know that information. You just click yes basically and turn it on and put on a rate on file. So those are a couple of ways that we're automating from, if you think about, I'm always back on this carrier sales funnel, but if you think about the mid to bottom of the funnel of getting carriers to start reusing them, learning about them, those are a couple of the main solutions for as you get to the middle and to the bottom of the funnel.
Where do you see, and this is kind of kind of will change topics a little bit, but
Sure.
how do you kind of see the role of AI evolving over the next few years? Because we've kind of seen it kind of go from no AI to kind of the chat GPT model to kind of just
Mm-hmm.
AI chatbots. And now we're full fledged email automation tools, phone call automation. Eventually I think, Jesse, we'll get to a point where we're going to have, and I know we're going to get to this point, we're going to have an AI from the carrier calling an AI from the broker, negotiating fully AI to AI. And it'll likely not even be a phone call taking place. It'll probably be an API from, or some new way of doing an AI to an AI tool like this to negotiate. But where do you kind of see the role of AI in freight brokerage over the next few years? Do you see it as more of like an assistant, or do you see it maybe taking the role of brokers eventually?
I think that it is something that will absolutely empower brokerages to become way better in the future. But I really liked the part of the question, especially about connectivity and AI bots, chatbots talking to other AI chatbots. And at face value, that at first when I thought about that, I thought that sounds kind of silly. Like two AI chatbots talking to each other in English. I don't know. But like actually I've heard different thoughts on this. On the one hand, I've heard this is all just going to circle back and become API connections, and there's just going to be easier API connectivity between carriers and brokers that are going to communicate via API, just like software platforms do. The other side of that is AI is the new API. And the advantage of that is that you don't have to build new API integrations between each and every carrier system, because building API integrations takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and each system has nuance. So why don't we just have LLMs talking to each other, decoding each other's language, and then turning that into action? I feel like that might be the more accurate prediction of the future, just because
Yeah.
like you talk about this platform, and especially on Parade, for example, we've got this AI agent thing happening, but on the back end there are, I don't know, at least 50 different integrations with different TMS platforms, load boards, compliance tools. Like those all take time and business relationship development to develop. And we've had years to do that. And so this is just a great new feature that is a huge game changer, but the architecture is already built. But for anything new, like carrier to broker connectivity, I really don't see all carriers adopting 1 to 5 main platforms to manage their business that can connect with all of these thousands of brokers via API. That seems inefficient to me. So it seems to me like just, all right, the carriers I really hope that carriers very soon get their AI thing going because it's a game changer for everybody who has it. And uh, you know, carriers historically are the last to adopt technology. I think a lot of that is not necessarily their fault. Carriers are in a really tough position, especially in this market. So saying, hey, go buy a bunch of software like that's a whole other separate issue. But I do see a bright future for if we can make sure that carriers are also getting their productivity gains that all the brokers and shippers are have been getting for a few years now.
Something else I kind of thought about, but what kind of maybe KPIs should brokerages maybe be tracking to measure the success of adding AI or voice AI into their operations? I think email would be probably maybe tough to track as well, but maybe what KPIs have you potentially seen brokerages adding in to maybe track the success of these kind of tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first one would probably be loads booked per rep. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a somewhat easy one to go get a hold of because you can see, well, I've got this many reps and this many loads that they're moving. Great, super efficient, get things moving as long as the unit economics of the loads themselves, margin, things like that are still healthy. That's a really big one. Another one is carrier reutilization rate. Like I'm seeing more shippers asking their brokers, like, how often are you reusing carriers versus just onboarding new ones? And that's how they are, looking at that stuff. People are never going away from this business. I would not want them to. It's like economic. Sorry, this is really meta, but people people separate like in politics, like there's social issues and economic issues. I don't see those things as being separate because I think that economics and economic activity is one of the most important social activities that people do. I mean, we spend 8 to 10 hours a day doing that. So dang, and I'm doing that with other people. So sorry, sidebar. But that being said, it's expensive to just rely on hiring people, and it's hard to find good ones, and it's hard to keep good ones. And so, if you look at cost per load, not just like loads per rep, but what's your cost per load moved? Those unit economics for a brokerage are super important to be tracking. If you look at total to truck and whatever commission that you're paying your rep, okay, great. But what about the time to cover? What about the time spent for each onboarded new carrier? Like that's a number that most brokers don't really have a super firm handle on, because if you set a stopwatch to see how long it takes to look up a carrier, look them up in your system, even though the systems are much better, to get them onboarded, uploaded, that time spent, and then you have to explain facility details to that brand new carrier and handle anything that might go wrong with that new carrier. It really just starts to eat up time.
It
So I
does.
think that's a really big one. So we have, for example, we have a built-in ROI calculator reporting suite. It's looking at digital bookings, cost per digital booking, cost per booking, carrier reuse. So we look at load to carrier ratio, how many carriers moved 4+ loads per month with you. And those are numbers that we continuously want to see going up. And because there are all sorts of bad things that can happen when you just rely on the one and dones. I know it has to happen sometimes, obviously, but there is a lot of risk, not just of fraud, but of service failures. What happens if you biff a couple loads because you gave it to some brand new carrier that you didn't know, but you needed to move that load, and then you lose that customer, and what's the revenue implication? So there's a lot of stuff that can be really hard to track, but there are a few in here that we're like, I can tell you how much more cost effective it is to cover a load digitally with Parade than it would be to answer one phone call, one email at a time, and onboard a new carrier every time.
Yeah, there's definitely times where the onboarding, or just the time of, like you said, from booking the load to explaining the new facilities to onboarding to getting them dispatched to them calling 3 times. It's not their fault, but calling 3 times to understand the facility and maybe not understand the instructions because maybe I'm bad at explaining the instructions now because I usually have my normal guy who moves this, but now my normal guy can't do it for whatever reason. So there's a lot of things that can eat up a lot of time. So yeah, I think that you're spot on with some of those like ways to be able to measure success with it, because it's not always about just kind of those raw, hey, he booked 15 more trucks by using Parade. It also comes down to they booked more trucks. Yes, but also how much more time did he get back to be able to build more pipeline, build more actual top of funnel, going back to your funnels, top of funnel, sales pipeline stuff, because that's just as important as being able to say, hey, we covered all of our loads for all of our customers, and now we can go after some new business or start to generate some new angles, or even penetrate deeper on our current accounts. So, just kind of being able to just measure based on, maybe booking loads and things like that isn't always the best way to go about it, because there's a lot of other things that kind of can go into how quickly you can book a load, or how efficiently you're doing that as well.
Yeah, and you also look at the pre-book rates, for example, like how much
Yep.
freight are you pre-booking? Because if you've got volume coming in, maybe it's contract freight, so you might get it several days in advance. And what percentage of those loads that you get in advance are you covering the day before or same day? Those that it's there are ways to measure your ability and effectiveness in getting from reactive freight brokerage to proactive freight
Yep.
brokerage. And all that stuff becomes possible when you have, yeah, the automation of the top of the funnel, but also when you have this system of intelligence that can help you understand, like, did I win a truck, or did I win the right truck? Was it
Yeah.
the best truck for the overall business, for that customer? There's a lot of play here. Like it's an art and a science, right?
Oh, it is. It is. Jesse, what's next for Parade after this launch? You guys have some more AI driven stuff in the pipeline?
There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. And as soon as we talk about pipeline, it's like, well, what? As soon as I say timelines and things like that, that timeline becomes inaccurate. Like it's immediately inaccurate.
Yeah.
but another really exciting feature that I think we've already launched it. So I can definitely talk about that.
Sweet.
Is this idea of it's not like a huge product launch. It's just a really important feature that people have asked about, and we take a very collaborative approach with our customers. So they say we want something. If 10 other of our customers say yes, we definitely want that, that's our signal to go build it. And so we do things with design partnership. So one big one is a capacity map that can show you a map of the United States, and each region, each state, where do you have a lot of empty trucks that you don't have freight for right now. And so
Interesting.
when you're going out to bid, it's like, well, I've got 50 trucks in this area that I know these carriers, they're my carriers. Let's go out and win some business in these areas. You can really understand, like, in any moment, where's your untapped capacity. The second really big one is continuous moves. So
Mm.
that is where, for example, if you're in Parade and you're booking a load, you're talking to a carrier saying, hey, let's take the Seattle to Houston load, and there's now a button in there that says, all right, show me all of my continuous haul moves. So while you're booking that, you can say, and after you drop that in Houston, here's a next load. I don't know where you're trying to get after that, but you can start moving chains of loads with carriers, because it can immediately pull up, hey, here's that next load coming out of Houston, back to your origin, or maybe it's going somewhere else. So in that one phone call where you're collecting quotes from a carrier and booking them, you can book 5 loads and get that carrier back home. And so there are all sorts of great rate implications of being able to do that, because if you can tell a carrier, I'll get you out in a triangle back home and take you on 3 loads, you have some bargaining power as far as rate goes there too. So that's another really cool, interesting thing. So it's just like a lot of little features that are really important on their own, that aren't necessarily part of this huge launch, which is, now you're not going to be getting these phone calls all day. You'll only get, your phone will only ring when it's a carrier that's qualified, can actually move the load, you can actually work with, and they've got a rate for you. So that's like
That's
a
awesome.
huge thing. And then there's like a lot of smaller, comparatively, things that come out along the way. Long term, man, there's so many things that we can do with it. But I think right now what we want to do is turn all of our customer base onto this co-driver voice thing, bring on new folks who want to better curate their network of carriers, spend way less time on these onesie twosie little emails and phone calls, and more time just being better brokers. So those are our big plans immediately, at least.
Man, that's awesome. And I love that feature as well, because I was, when I was first a broker, there was definitely some loads I had that I had to string together a several loads to sell to get to a driver to be able to get them either back home or to a more desirable area. So being able to kind of have a tool that can do that all at, maybe one time, or be able to look at where these available loads are and how we can match things in an easier fashion. Yeah, that's a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
And it's an easy tool. It's an easy add-on,
Yeah, exactly. So, it's deeply integrated with your TMS. So it's you can see, actually, it depends on the TMS, but you can see all the quotes coming in right in one screen as well. So it's really trying to reduce the clicks, reduce the amount of time that it takes for a broker to do their job. I don't think anybody comes into freight brokerage saying, I want to answer the phone all day and tell carriers that I can't work with them. Ideally, they want to be making money, right? Moving tons of volume. We want to get brokers to move 200 plus loads per day. And it's very possible. That sounds kind of pie in the sky, but we've crunched the numbers. There's a reason why we say 200 and not 100 and not 10,000. 200 loads per rep per day is totally possible. And that will happen with kind of the adoption of many different things. It's not just one feature. If we just had voice, I don't think that would be possible. If we just had email, I don't think that would be possible. If we just had quote or book now or whatever it is, it wouldn't be possible. It is the collection of all of these things in one platform that are going to make 200 loads per rep per day possible.
Yeah, it's the whole ecosystem you guys have built, around all that. I love it.
Yeah,
exactly. Jesse, thanks for coming back and talking about AI and carrier capacity. I always love having you on, because carrier capacity is, management of carrier capacity is kind of one of those things that I feel like is not talked about enough, but like needs to be talked about a lot more. So, where can listeners connect with you or learn more about Co-Driver?
Yeah, folks, go to parade.ai. We had the parade, the .ai, .ai domain long before LLMs were around, but hey, it came to fruition. The other thing is, follow me on LinkedIn, Jesse Taylor. I'm on there. I'm running my mouth, so do connect.
He's always
with me.
on there.
And we'll also be where, I don't know when this will come out. We're also at TIA, all the main conferences, things like that.
Perfect. Yeah, this will come out probably right before TIA. So if you guys are at TIA, make sure you connect with Jesse. I'll also be at TIA, so make sure you come and see us as well. If you guys like today's podcast, make sure you give it a like and review. We'll make sure to have all of Jesse's links and Parade's links in the comment wherever you're listening. Don't forget, we do drop 3 weekly newsletters, thinkfreight.io, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll catch you guys in the next episode. And don't forget to think freight.